Hi, Tom Cole for the Steve Taylor Community Star, and certainly it really is an honor for us to recognize incredible people in our community that have a remarkable body of work, and one such person is here in our studio today who also happens to be a very good friend of mine and my wife Karen's, and that is Joan Uhl Browne. Joan, welcome in as the Steve Taylor Community Star of the month of May.
Thank you.
And I got to tell you, Joan, and you're a humble gal, but I got to tell you, Steve and I were chatting in his green room in his office, and we've seen a lot of resumes, and you know, as Steve was said to me, you know, when you see these resumes, you make it feel like we haven't done anything, which might be true. I don't know, but seriously, you should be proud of that. I think it's the best resume that we've ever seen, and we've seen some good ones. So first of all, you have to be pretty proud of that body of work, and it's so atypical for what we're doing because this award is for a body of work. So you have to be pretty proud of what you've accomplished.
Well, thank you. I don't think of it that way. It certainly has been eclectic. It did not take a straight path like some careers have, I guess. Well,
and I'll give the folks, you know, we'd be here for 2 hours if we went through all the things you've been involved in, but just a couple of things off the top. That President of Lott Industries, which was incredible work. You were chair of the board of the University of Toledo, which our university is so important to our community. You know, you and Lori Schoen are the driving force on Unruly Arts, which we've established a great relationship, and I think we're planning on doing a couple events either in August or September that will be a great fun. Your artists are tremendous, and I think you've seen their artwork displayed in our dealership. Steve's got them hung up, I do, Nick does, Terry does. So that's a really extremely cool thing. But you know, you're a lady of ideas, and I think that's another reason Steve's really looking forward to interviewing you, because he's an idea guy. And it's hard to come up with ideas. And your idea of making a presentation to the university and the city and all the powers that be in Toledo to make Toledo the friendliest city for folks with disabilities in the United States is an incredible idea. Number one, kudos for that. Two, it's currently ongoing, so when somebody takes your idea and runs with it, talk a little bit about that.
Well, I would like to take credit for it. Actually, it was Tim Harrington's idea of what, you know, of being known as the most disability-friendly community, but it was great fun to work on the project. I think we are well on our way of becoming the most disability-friendly community. It's hard to say quickly. But those are the type of projects that I really like to work on. Yeah,
and you know, you've done so much with educating folks in high schools, colleges, businesses on people with autism, how to help them assimilate in. Autism, there's a wide spectrum of where you are on that. Some people, you might not really know that they're autistic. There's just certain things. Other people, you definitely understand that they're autistic. What don't people understand about autism, would you say, in general, Joni?
Oh, that's a tough one, Tom. I think probably one thing they don't understand is what you just said. You know, autism is a spectrum. And so some people may have sensory issues. Some people may have trouble, they call it, with executive functioning. You know, you meet one person with autism, you meet one person with autism. People are very, very different of how they present or what they do, what they like to do, what they don't like to do, what they are sensitive to, what interests them. Not really that different than the rest of us. They just go about life a little bit differently, want the same things.
Yes. You know, a lot of people go about their daily lives and they say, oh, you know, that person has a disability, well, I feel bad, but, you know, I've got to get to work, or I have to do this, or, you know, I hope it works out for them. You've always been a person who looks at those situations and you say, how can we help? How can we make their life better? That comes from somewhere. I mean, in your background, where does that come from?
It must come from my parents. My parents were always very involved in the community, and I guess, you know, I never have given it much thought. It's just what you do. Yeah. So I must have just been raised that way, I guess.
Well, if we get more people thinking that that's just what you do, we're going to be in a lot better position. You know, I think I've shared this story with you, but I think it's important, since we're interviewing you as our Steve Taylor Community Star of the Month. When we had that event that you put together, you and Steve put together here for Unruly Arts, and we've done, you know, so many events, and I think Steve would probably tell you it's one of the best we've ever done. I mean, if not the best.
We had a great time.
The vibe here was just, you know, it was palatable. I don't think I've ever been to an event where the minute you walked in it, you had such a good feeling of what was going on, and when you left it, you had that same incredible good feeling. But so all the artists from Unruly Arts had their art displayed, and a woman came up to me who I'd never met before in my life, never seen, never talked to, and she said, I just want you to know, and you can tell this to Mr. Taylor, said, I will never, and no one in my family will ever buy another car from anybody but the Taylors for what they did tonight, because their daughter was an artist, and they got to keep, what, half of the money, half goes to Unruly Arts. You're buying supplies, you're buying canvas, you're buying paints, you're keeping the lights on, everything's expensive. And then the artist gets to keep the other half. And the parents were so overjoyed that their daughter had this experience. They were overwhelmed. I mean, it was such a, do you notice that in the studio, that you see this kind of affirmation for your artists when people appreciate their work?
All the time. When we first opened, we had a mother come up and she started to talk to us, and then she walked away, and we thought she was upset.
Yes.
And she came back to us the next day and told us the story that when she had her daughter, this particular woman had Downs, and they had just moved across the country and they didn't know anybody, and she went to a new doctor, and the doctor, she said, my daughter isn't, you know, progressing like she should be, and they said, well, she has Downs. You ought to just put her in a home and
yes.
and you know, don't look back. So she traveled all around until she found a doctor that said, she'll do fine, just have more kids, surround her in the family. And so that's what she did. She had more children, but this particular woman, by the time she came to us, she was probably in her 40s, had this great talent that no one ever knew, nor did they ever recognize. And so this mother was so overwhelmed that she finally got to celebrate her daughter and see other people celebrate her daughter, which she had never had that opportunity before. And that really made an impression with Lori and I. It was the very first show we ever did. And that has continued over and over and over again, because then people really just see the people for who they are and what they can do. And so the studio itself is a really happy place. It's just a joyful place.
You know, and one caveat to the story I just told, which you also know this, is a very cool ending to the story. All the art was sold in maybe an hour and a half, except was one or two pieces. Everything else went. It was incredible that it all sold so quickly. And I think you had mentioned to Steve about, well, everything was sold, and then Steve goes, well, what about, except for those two pictures? And Steve said, no, everything's sold. And he went in his office, wrote a check for it, and it was done, you know, and
it was great.
That was so cool. Joan Uhl Browne, you know, you are a trailblazer in our community. I think I know you are a role model for young women. It isn't easy for women to be in the business world. You've gone toe-to-toe with the good old boys in the boardroom. You've shown that not only do women have a place, but I would suggest that they're a lot smarter most of the time than the guys. But being a role model is a big deal, and you've been that in the community for young women across the board, so congratulations to you.
Thank you.
All right, Joni.
Thank you.
We'll be back with Mr. Steve Taylor to wrap it up.
Hey everybody, Steve Taylor here with Steve Taylor's Community Star for the month of May. I'm here with Joan Uhl Browne, and Tom said it best, the resume was unbelievable. I mean, Tom and I were talking about it before and just said, wow, you've been involved in so many things. One thing I'd like to talk to you about is your time at University of Toledo and as the board chair. I mean, that had to be exciting, and you were probably involved in so many behind the scenes things. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I will tell people sometimes that was the best of times and the worst of times.
I can imagine.
But right before I became chair of the board, I chaired the search that ended up in hiring a Dan Johnson.
Okay.
So that was really an intense experience, but ended up in hiring just the most lovely man and was so wonderful for UT. So that certainly was a great experience. And right after Dan started, we were planning his inauguration, and it was supposed to be homecoming, where it just happened we were playing Navy, and it just happened that Dan's brother-in-law was the CNO. He was the chief naval officer.
Sure.
And so everyone kept saying, is he really coming? I said, yeah, as long as we don't go to war, kind of flippantly. And that's when 9/11 happened.
Right.
So he did still come, and it was a really moving ceremony, and it was really moving having Navy there.
Right.
But that certainly was, a memory that stands out. And then just the people that you get to meet. I met 3 Supreme Court justices.
Oh, wow.
I hooded Ted Turner, a real variety of people. But it was, really a lovely educational time, really, for me as well.
I'm sure there's so many highlights and probably fun, unusual experiences too.
And then some that weren't so great. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think so many people in Toledo, when you grow up with a university like Toledo in your backyard, sometimes it gets overlooked, and those of us that have been in Toledo our whole lives sometimes forget about how great of a university it really is. So
it really is.
It's I think it doesn't get the credit that it deserves, especially from all of us right here in Toledo, because it is such
tend to take it for granted.
Exactly, I think we do. One of the things I'd like to talk to you about too, I always like to ask guests that come in, especially someone like you who's been involved in so many different organizations and you've seen so many different things. Do you have a story of possibly something or someone that you've seen that sticks out to you that says, wow, this person, I was able to help make a difference with this person or with this group or organization? I always like to throw people on the spot too. I don't give you a heads up because it comes right out of the heart, probably, a good story.
What I'm probably most proud of is when we did hire Dan.
Sure.
Johnson. UT had gone through a really difficult time. We had lost a lot of faculty members. There was a lot of mistrust. And so I put a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that it was transparent, the search, and that everyone had input. And that probably made the most difference for this town, even though indirectly, just that we brought in somebody like a Dan Johnson at a time when we really needed it. And then of course, doing the art studios has certainly, you can directly see the impact there.
Sure.
But I've been blessed with working with some great organizations, certainly the zoo, the Metro Parks.
Right.
Yeah, it's all been good.
Well, obviously your decision to help bring in Dan Johnson, you don't realize how many people that affects. Like you said, the faculty, the students, but even the community at large. So that probably was weighing on your shoulders too, right? Making sure you found that right fit.
It was. I lived in Findlay at the time, and there were still a lot of people that were really unhappy about the previous president, and so I would drive up and I told any group that wanted to meet with me, I would meet with them, and I would tell them how this new search was going to go, and it was going to be transparent. Of course, no one, would believe me. But I would just let people vent, and I would be driving home thinking, am I bleeding? Because people were really emotionally invested in it. So to have it be successful and have it be with someone like Dan was something that I am really proud of.
That's great. Well, obviously something you can hang your hat on for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Unruly Arts. It's something that we obviously have been involved with, and thanks to you and Tom, that connection has been made, and we had such a great evening when the artists came out. And talk a little bit more to the folks that maybe don't know about Unruly Arts, and just explain a little bit about the great program over there.
So Unruly Arts is a 501c3, a nonprofit, and it is for artists with disabilities, any kind of disabilities. It can be physical, it can be developmental. We have artists from, well, it was 18 to unlimited.
Okay.
Now with the Community Foundation, we got a grant that we're actually able to now provide services also to kids in school.
Oh, great.
So we've now expanded, because of them, the Community Foundation, which we really appreciate. But we had artists that are 86 years old. So, and it's very inclusive. So we have artists that do not have a disability, but the whole idea was to be able to create art without boundaries in an inclusive environment. And it's just been a real joy. Lori Schoen is an amazing art director.
She is. She's great.
And so yeah, we started it in 2017, January of 2017, and it is growing.
Yep. Well, we hope to continue to have a relationship and have an art show like we did every year. Last year, obviously, with COVID, we got held back, and we're looking forward to this year. But it was such a fantastic evening where all the artists got to come out and show their art, whether it was paintings or sculpture, jewelry. It was such a fun night. And like Tom said, you know, a lot of their family and their friends were able to come out and really participate and see their art on display. So what a fun event. I think Tom said we're going to try to work together with the Toledo Museum of Art too.
Which would be really wonderful.
Yeah, that would be a great collaboration also.
That's one of the great things. We're located in the Botanical Gardens. And what is beautiful is they call it the Artist Village. So we have glass blowers and we have Pottery Guild, and they've really now started interacting with our artists. So it gives our artists a chance to work with other artists as well and be exposed to art that maybe we wouldn't be able to expose them to. And so it's really, really been a lovely collaboration at the Metro Parks.
That's great. Tell folks too how they can get involved in Unruly Arts too. I'm sure there's always, whether it's donations or volunteers, they probably could always use some help.
Donations, certainly. We are privately funded. We just go by donations from individuals or businesses. We do charge a fee, but if the artists can't pay, we take them anyhow. So certainly donation of time, donation of money, materials. We keep a list on the website.
Okay, great.
Of what materials we're looking for at the time.
Nice.
So yeah, all of that would be great, or just come out and buy.
There you go. We'll make sure to share your website too on screen there so people can go right on, check it out. Well, we appreciate you coming into the studio today. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for everything you do in the community. And really, like we said, your resume, we could spend hours going over all the things you've done, all the things you've given back in our community. So thank you for being a star, and appreciate you being here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good one.